Okay, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. This is going to be a short presentation, primarily about DataWharf, an open source application that will help you convert your schemas from other databases. My name is Eric Lenve. I'm also a senior principal software architect for Deltek, but I usually represent here the Seattle Postgres user group. This is where I usually come all the time. So if you are in the neighborhood, please come in and join us. I presented actually DataWharf last year in the San Jose conference. At that time, I was focusing on the entire application. Here, I'm going to focus more on its newest feature, which is data migration or schema migration. But DataWharf itself is actually a whole modeling tool, which helps you to do modeling of conceptual modeling, logical modeling, and physical modeling. Although the physical modeling is actually between logical and physical, as you're going to see in a moment. The application, you can actually use something called projects, which will help you do modeling. These are usually used by teams that don't have databases yet, and are just trying to design or do conceptual modeling of what they have, although they can create already entities and attributes, and it's more used again by architects. The application side of DataWharf, this is actually managing data dictionaries. Currently, an application and a data dictionary have a one-to-one relationship. So when you create an application, you are basically creating a data dictionary. But unlike most data dictionaries, DataWharf, the fields, for example, the columns, have their own data type, which is independent of the backend. But because internally I use as well PostgreSQL, there are some extra features to take advantage of the PostgreSQL specific features or enhancements it has, like for example arrays, which are not support in other databases, or even some extra advanced data types. Oracle doesn't have yet UUID, I believe, and also we can keep track of unlocked tables. So DataWharf is 100% open source, free. You can download it. I also provide it as a Docker container. There's a YouTube clip about how to install and have it running for you. You can run it locally, or you can run it on your network. It is meant to be actually for large teams. This was used in the company where I used to work, where we had over 100 users that had accounts in DataWharf. So engineers can create their schemas, and the support team or QA team will be able to read what you have. And also multiple diagrams can be created for your schemas, and they can be used, for example, when you create JIRA tickets or work orders to be provided. This is why DataWharf is an enterprise solution, because you can actually manage users. It's not just a desktop app. Although I usually run it also locally. You also have import exports now in DataWharf, so you can create your own models or data dictionaries locally and transmit them to other instances of DataWharf. And it also now has a fairly powerful API, which will allow you to synchronize with external data dictionaries. DataWharf also can run on AWS. And it has support to sign audits, so if you want to see anything, whomever change any kind of information anywhere, you need to add the extension for sign audit, and it handles it. So this is one of the screens of DataWharf where you can see a modeling side of diagrams, and when you click on these tables, you can actually see the schemas of those tables on the right panel. It can help you keep track of renaming of namespaces, schemas in Postgres, tables, column indexes, and enumerations. One of the problems you often have when you migrate your schemas from one system to another, you may want to rename your column at the same time. You may want to take advantage of those. This will help you do those. Many schema management tool cannot create the migration script for you once you are changing names. Here you can. So again, part of this presentation would be to help you actually generate migration scripts. I don't know if any of you use, for example, Flyway, one of those tools to actually apply scripts. This will actually help you create the scripts, although you can also apply the scripts. So we have a concept of deployments that you can deal. All elements in DataWharf have a life cycle, so you can actually deal with propose tables or columns and so on, or discontinue them. The propose and discontinue will have an effect on the fact that they will not be pushed out to your schema changes. So if you're just thinking about a new table, thinking of some new fields, you put them in the proposed state, and they will not be used to create your migration script. And if you decide to no longer use a column, for example, you just mark it discontinued and it will be disregarded. Script that is created is actually safe in the sense no deletes occur. Now it may change the size of columns, make them wider, but never any restriction, never any downgrading is being done. For each application, we can register something called personal deployments or system-wide deployments. Deployment is basically a connection, how you connect to a database. Obviously, if you're a developer, you probably will be connecting to your local host. Since this is a web app, you should in that case use DataWharf locally, or you need to map your local host to be reachable from the server. And also, DataWharf will help you compare your schema. So if something changes, it will help you detect the delta, the difference. That's why you would have one or multiple deployments. So if one schema of your application, you may have different versions of deployment that you already have. And when it creates a schema migration, it's going to compare what you have. Unlike Flyaway, where you have to be applying certain migration one after the other, this one can skip all those phases and actually compare what you actually have out there and make the schema changes for you. By the way, if you're using the API, you can actually do those changes via API, so you don't have to use the user interface. All right, these are the steps that I'll be creating. Normally, I will be adding a new application, although I already did it for time reason. You need to set up 2 deployments. Here, I will be using a MySQL as my source schema. I got an open source schema, a very simple open source schema I'm using. But I did execute this on some very large Oracle databases. I had one with over 5,000 tables and do all the conversion with over 150,000 columns. So this can really handle really large schemas. And then we'll go through a process called load, which we are loading the schema in the system. Then we'll review the integrity and we'll do some fixing, because again, most of the time when we load the data in, it may not understand everything, or you can set up integrity tests in your schema. You can actually tell, hey, I would like to have all my primary keys to be integers, or I need the primary keys, or there are like around 20 different validation tests that you can enable or disable accordingly, and you have a system to help you warn at the level of the columns, the tables, the enumeration, the values, even indexes, and you can fix those. So we'll do some cleanup before we do the next step, which is we'll use the destination, which will be a Postgres database, and we'll generate a script, or we can actually have it applied for you. And then we can also have an option called Delta, which if we remove something or change something, we can actually detect what is different in the schema definition that we have in DataWharf or in a physical deployment. Okay, let's go I'll go first to PG admin. I have a database here called classic model, and if I do a refresh, you can see that I don't have schemas. I deleted the public schema. It's gone. Now, because I'm using MySQL, by default, it's going to put everything into a schema called public, although you could change that. MySQL does not have the concept of schemas. In this case, schema is what we call a namespace. So you have to be very careful with the term schema, because a schema can be understood as the definition of your structure versus what Postgres calls a schema. So in DataWharf, I do not use the word schema. I use the word namespace, since this is supposed to be compatible across multiple backends. And this is my instance of DataWharf. I'm currently running it locally. If I was using Docker, I could actually also connect to this. If you're using Docker, I would highly suggest you that you actually, and there are instructions and a YouTube clip about this, you create an empty database. You can call it DataWharf. Set up your Docker image, point to it, and DataWharf will actually create its own tables. I can show it afterwards if you have some time, its own schema, if you're interested to see how the modeling tool is used. Step one, we go to the application. I actually had an option to wipe every setting. If you go into the setting application, you can delete everything except deployments. Here I'll have 3 private personal deployments. So again, you can configure deployments, specify where your connection is, how to set the password, the ports, and so on. I'm running everything locally here, so it's fairly simple. If you are in your company, of course, you may need to connect to your corporate database if you want to fetch that. All right, so let's pick the MySQL. I have it connected here. And I'm using HiDSQL here, and these are the tables I have in MySQL. Just a few very simple tables, again, for the purpose of this demo, although, as I said, this can run on hundreds, if not thousands of tables. And if you use Postgres, then it would actually also load the enumeration definitions for you. So I will do load. I agree. And it created one namespace. As I mentioned, it will make a public namespace. It has 8 tables in it. And we've got some warning. So the way this is actually defined in the data dictionary setting, you have all of these flags that are specified for data integrity. So you have like table must have a primary key. Foreign key type must match primary key type. Foreign key must be nullable. And so you have a bunch of those validation checks that I said, even if you don't do migration from another backend, if you already have a Postgres database, you could use this to verify the soundness of your own database. So let's go and do some fixing here. By the way, the search engine that you have is quite advanced. You can actually search all the tables. You can even search by a column name. So you can see, show me all the tables that have some certain column, either starting, ending, or an exact match. Or you can go really advanced and actually search the status of a documentation of a column or column types. Find me all of the columns that are JSON, for example, every table or whatever you need. And you can also monitor when was something modified last. So you have this option to see the history of changes, especially if you're working on a team and you want to be able to filter who touched this last hour, day, week, something. So you can find out something was not changed, and actually you can go and see the change that occurred. Okay, let's do some fixing here. So it says in this one, the table, primary key is missing. Actually, we have a primary key, but in this case, there was no constraint that existed on my source database. I can guess that this is a customer, so that probably the customer number is probably the primary key. I'll go to the column and I specify the purpose of this column is the primary key. So you have kind of 4 types of use of column. If it's not specified, it's a regular column, meaning it's an attribute. A primary key, a foreign key, or what I call a support key. A support key, for example, would be creation time of the record, last modification time of the record, or user name or ID. So you can mark those, so when you visualize your column, you will have a separate icon. Or you can see it tells, don't show me, only show me the core fields. I don't care about primary key, foreign key, just show me the one that really matters. So this is what you would use. If you set up a primary key in DataWharf, you basically don't have to deal with the type. In a setting, you can specify the kind of type that all primary keys should be. So this is a little constraint of DataWharf. I don't let you have in one table one kind of primary key, another table another kind. It makes absolutely no sense. If you have a primary key, there should be either all integers, big int, or SSIDs, or UUIDs. That's up to you. All right, so I fixed this particular table. I can skip to the next table. I don't have to go back to my list of tables. Employees, employee number, integer, that's a primary key. Next. Oh, this is next column. I can move between columns, or I can just list all the columns so you have easy navigation here. So I'm back at the level of the table. Go to the next table. Offices. I have an office code. I have office code, but again, a code is if you think about normalization rule, it's not a good idea to have a code to be your primary key. Usually, a user changeable field should not be the primary key. So in this case, let's add a primary key. For ease of use, I just call it PK. Used as primary key. And I go back to my column, and here's the primary key. Now, in Postgres, every column is always added at the end. This is a data dictionary, a management tool, so you can actually change the display order. So I can actually reorganize my columns in a more readable fashion. If you use DataWharf to document your data dictionary, your schemas, structure of data dictionaries, you can actually order the columns in a sense that makes sense versus when it's deployed and implemented or created on the back end. Next table, order number, I'm in the order details. So obviously this order number is a foreign key. Actually, I can see it detected it. It's a foreign key to the order table. So let me add a PK. And then you can see why I chose a small database, so I don't have to spend too much time doing this. And there we are. Order number, orders. Yes, this must be the primary key. Next column, customer number, payments. Nope. So in this case, they didn't even make a primary key. Let's make a primary key again here. I think I've got 4 or 5 of these tables that needs a new field being added. Luckily, it's not too many. Product line. Again, this is probably the logical primary key, but this is a field that is changeable. Pretty bad idea to not have a primary key that is independent of the table. Primary key. Next, product code. Again, there's a product line. This is products. Let's add a new one here again. I think this might be the last one. Yes, there is no next table. So if I go back to my list of tables, they're all set. All right. And no errors, no warnings. And you can actually see the time when I changed. Of course, you don't have to display those. You can turn off the display of the column. Let's go to my deployments. And this time, I'm going to pick up the Postgres database. If I just go in this method and I do generate script, here's the script it created for you. So we have a first section to create my, is this big enough for you guys? Okay. So this is going to basically create your schema. Now I'll use that if not exists just in case. And create all the table with all the columns, all the primary keys. It's going to build the indexes for you. If your index names are too long, it's actually going to use an internal UUID because you have a limitation in Postgres of 63 characters. So it can handle those. And I don't have any renames. I can just do an update. Remember, I wiped out the public schema out of the database. So I can just do an update. In this case, by the way, I had to mark this deployment as updatable. Yes?
Yeah. The question is over here, when you are migrating one schema from one database to another type of database, you have to set up the primary. It's already set up the primary keys and foreign keys.
Then if you do have it properly set up, like for example, set foreign keys, the primary key, I think it reads again from the constraint. If I had a constraint or definition of the primary key, it would read it from there.
So it is also, if I have a proper schema, every primary foreign key relationships are already established. Even then, when I'm migrating to PostgreSQL database, I will have to do all this.
To my knowledge, no. If it is properly set up in the source, then it will be fine.
It will be fine.
If there's some kind of problem, let me know and I'll add the feature. To my knowledge, it's there because I already imported several Postgres and other backends, and I had no problem. I just saw that this database, this sample database I got from MySQL, because I didn't have the ability to run Oracle here. I tried to run Oracle in Docker container, but it was a nightmare. And MSSQL is a mammoth. So again, it's not something you.
I migrated Microsoft SQL Server database to Postgres, and
Using this?
the tool, I forgot its name long ago, 4 or 5 years ago. So it worked very well. But this is the first time I'm seeing DataWharf. So this tool can migrate any database to.
Those four types of backends. Those are the one I support for now. I actually added the Oracle backend just 3-4 months ago, and it took me a couple of days. So it was pretty quick because I have a whole mapping, an internal mapping of all the field types. So DataWharf has a generic list of field types internally, and then based upon the kind of source type, I try to guess what the best possibility is. And by the way, if I go back to database tables, and let's do advanced column type, other. There are a few. I have a few tables here. It says, what is other? I have contain. I thought it was visible here. Oh, here, other. Don't know what it is. So probably I didn't implement this or didn't support it. So sometimes I monitor those and I try to find what is something new. Like in Oracle, I found out that they don't call varchar, they call them varchar2. Okay. So as it happens, I try to enhance those. And again, this is an open source project, so you can actually see all the pushes, and I have a very full change log. I have like over 280 commits. This is already about 3 years old approximately. So I'm enhancing constantly as I need. I have another open source project I'm working on, and DataWharf is a foundation of it. And actually, DataWharf document itself. I think I'm almost supposed to be done. Do you have a few more minutes? I can show you in here. Yes, I am basically done. Schema, public, table, and here they are. Okay? So
How do you do those other data types?
if I discover them, I change the code to load them, to detect the best I can. Some of those, when I'm migrating from Postgres to Postgres, I will read comment field. So if you really want to keep your original one, just put a comment field to let me indicate what it's supposed to be. Otherwise, again, you will have to go and update the columns themselves into the tool here. If you look, for example, at the DataWharf documentation itself, one quick class thing. Classic diagram. So this is what I mean by the diagrams being done for you. So you can organize and change these. No, here I've listing every single table. And as you move through these, the side panel changes for you. Save. My settings, I made it too wide. Diagram width. Okay, so now you can see your schema as you go. So this might be useful, but if you look at the DataWharf dictionary itself, and when you add an application, you can load in the entire schema. You remember I said you can import, export data dictionaries? You can load the DataWharf data dictionary itself. But yes, if you find any kind of other, let me know. Connect to me, LinkedIn, or you can find my information to the conference, and you can do this. Now, if you work for companies, you have a team, and you need me to help you out set it up, I sometimes do that. I try to help other teams to use it. It's being used, and I have even a company in New Zealand using it now. It's kind of funny. And that's it. Any other questions? Thank you for coming.